What is up, everybody? If you're wondering why I have this background and thumbnail of the American flag upside down inverted, it's long been understood that it's never okay under any circumstances to have the American flag flown upside down or posted upside down unless in states of distress or threat to the union, to the nation. And that's what I see today as, even though the vast majority of us strongly dislike President Biden and strongly dislike Kamala Harris and deeply support Donald Trump. The way that this is played out is the ultimate threat to the nation. I mean, they've taken this decision out of our hands and put it in the hands of people who in large part are not elected, who we did not choose. Like, you see Nancy Pelosi, Alex Soros, the Clintons. They were the ones that were pressuring Biden to step down. And, now it's not a normal primary process where they're selecting who the Democrat nominee is. They're putting it in the hands of the delegates at the DNC to decide upon themselves who the candidate that they could control best to be the Democrat nominee is going to be. And it's going to be Harris because, she's spent a lifetime being somebody who's a sellout and carrying out the agenda of the deep state, of the people that don't have our best interests in mind. So let's quickly play a tribute to show what we're in for with the Democrat nominee candidate.
And how can this directly affect the people of the United States?
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia.
We campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P. The plan.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again. I've said I'm going to go to the border. And
When are you going to the border, Vice President?
The administration has asked. I'm not finished. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
And I'm being clear with you right now.
Yes, okay.
And so if you're interested, I'll continue to be clear. There are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. We are doing it.
But should we have done it sooner?
We are doing it.
What do you see as the biggest national security challenge confronting the U.S.? What is the thing that worries you and keeps you up at night?
Frankly, one of them is our democracy.
You don't feel misused or underused?
No, I don't.
When folks vote, they order what they want, and in this case, they got what they asked for. I went off script a little bit.
All right, so it's a little taste of what we're in for. And but you gotta give it to her though. She's come a long way from where she started off, which is right here.
Before she met Doug Emhoff, she dated some prominent men, including in 2001, former talk show host Montel Williams. Back then, he was the famous one and had to introduce her to the paparazzi. Now the whole world knows who she is.
So she went from the streets to her knees to the White House, and potentially, if the deep state gets its way, she's going to be the next president or Democrat nominee. So she's more dangerous than Biden because she actually thinks that, she has good ideas and she's going to aggressively pursue these ideas. So the interesting question now, and something that really went under the radar, who's going to be her VP pick? And interestingly enough, I mean, maybe this is totally a coincidence, but there's been a lot of momentum pushing this guy that's the governor of Pennsylvania, and it's been right after Trump, almost got assassinated in Pennsylvania. So I'm sure that's just a coincidence, but look at let's see, this article from Newsweek. I'll show it to you real quick. It says this combination has a chance to beat Trump according to polls. Let me see, where is that? Newsweek. Here we go. Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump with this running mate, polls suggest. Came out July 21st. Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump in the presidential election if she chooses Josh Shapiro as her running mate, according to a new poll. The survey conducted by public policy polling between July 17th and 18th, before Joe Biden announced he was dropping out, focused on registered voters in Michigan and Pennsylvania, which is believed some experts to be the state's Democrat need to hold in order to win. So yeah, I'm sure that's just a coincidence, but there's also this website that shows, here, let me show you. This guy went from a 0.3% chance to being the nominee to 3% right after the assassination attempt on Trump. I mean, I think that's weird. Here, look at this. Ready? So Shapiro on July 12th, the day before the thing happened with Trump, he's at 1%. Week before, 1%, and then temporarily down to 0.5, but then boom, goes all the way up to 3% just 1 week later. And then here, I'll show you what the mainstream media is saying now about who they think should be the running mate for House.
The vice president, and then who do we pick as her running mate? There are no indications yet, and Bob has reported this as well, that there are no others currently planning to step up and challenge her after the president said what he said this afternoon, endorsing his running mate. But there will be a conversation about who is most palatable, who makes the most sense to be on the ticket with her. We've heard about a handful of governors, some senators as well across the country from key swing states that could conceivably help. We've seen some statements from some of those that had raised concerns about the president in recent days. Let's look at this list, for example, here. You have the Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear, the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, the Michigan governor, Gretchen Whitmer, the North Carolina governor, Roy Cooper. Those four right there are seen as potential good ones because they have executive experience. They've run modestly sized states, or in the case of Andy Beshear, won re-election as a Democrat in a red state, and are seen as the kind of person who can be sent out to campaign with the Senate and House candidates who for the last 3 weeks have been saying they can't campaign alongside the president. Others on that list, Mark Kelly from Arizona would be an interesting pick, the former astronaut from a swing state. There's a Democratic governor who could replace him, what might deliver a much-needed battleground state. Those are the kinds of conversations going on right now with Democrats.
Well, certainly the same still exists today about that blue wall that the Democrats, assuming that Vice President Kamala Harris could carry the same states that they did in the last election, the most contested ones being the blue wall, giving Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania very popular in that state and popular with people who voted for Trump. So his name also at the top there. Robert Costa.
How the hell is Shapiro popular in Pennsylvania? Philadelphia is a freaking dumpster fire now. It's like the fentanyl disaster capital of the world. Any of those videos you see with people frozen in place because of fentanyl, it's coming from Philadelphia.
I just stepped off set for a few minutes to get calls from a couple of the people closest to President Biden and some fascinating new details to share with you. This was in the minds of, in the words of his closest advisors, a quote, presidential decision. That's how he frames a lot of things in his presidency. And he did it very much alone. Yes, he conferred with some of his family members and advisors, but he has been in isolation in his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. He has been exhausted in recent days. He has been monitoring the polls, including one from the Detroit Free Press. The weight of this all, as he's been coughing all weekend alone, has been enormous on his shoulders. He has felt wounded at times from how fellow Democrats, including from the Obama-Biden administration, have talked about him publicly, how he feels pressured to get out of the race. But he kept this decision extremely close. His son Hunter, reportedly in California, not in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, this weekend. He's talking to his sister Valerie, talking, of course, to the First Lady, Jill Biden. And they have all said to him in recent days, you do what's best for you. This is your decision to make. And he has been alone because of COVID, not because he wants to be alone. He's actually been in a pretty salty mood, I've been told, because of COVID, and he doesn't have the ability to use his phone as much or have the kind of meetings he wants to have. But there have been some key people who've really helped him with this decision to think it through. Mike Donnellan, who goes back decades with him.
All right, we get the point. But guys, here's the thing about this. the deep state. This is how they work. You know, we saw they threw Biden onto the wolves for the debate. We saw how this whole thing was going to play out 2-3 weeks ago. I mean, and it is crazy how the thing played out with Trump. I mean, so RFK, he got assassinated right before the DNC that year in 68. So they're trying to create that kind of situation with Trump. Like, it's not an accident or coincidence that that happened with him right before the RNC was about to happen. And I heard from a source that I trust, Robert Barnes, he's a lawyer. He said that there are people that are of the belief that Nikki Haley was ready to be the presidential or RNC nominee if Trump was to be taken out. So they had this thing in place. I mean, imagine a situation where we ended up having Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris on the ticket. Dear God. Here, let me show you this Van Jones clip quick. I mean, he's doing his whole song and dance. Yeah, I heard he was crying.
There's a lot of political stuff. The Democratic Party is a family. At the end of the day, this is a family matter. You know, Joe Biden's body may not be as strong as it used to be. His language skills may not be as sharp as they used to be. His heart is as big as ever.
Oh, God.
His heart is as big and as true and as strong. And this is the difference between a politician and a leader. He made a selfless decision, and people are heartbroken. Even people who are pushing for this to happen. It's kind of like when your grandpa, you got to take the keys, and everybody, you got to take his keys, you got to take his keys, you got to, and he's fighting and he's fighting, and everybody's so frustrated, and then you finally get the keys back, and then you just cry. Because this is somebody that you love. This is somebody that you care about. This is somebody who was there for you. This is somebody you wouldn't be here without him. And you have to take something from him. Now, this is not, look, politics is politics. But this is a human moment for one of the great humans in America. This is a huge moment for him, for his family, for all of us who love him, for all of us who wanted him to get across the finish line. But if you're a young person watching this is leadership. This is
oh my God.
This is what it means to put the country first and put the party first and put the cause first. When your arm gets tired, you let somebody else finish pitching the game. That's what Joe Biden has done, and he's done that for all of us. And so I just want to say, I don't know who's going to be the VP, the non-VP. I don't know anything about politics. I just know that I love this man. I care about this man. It was painful every day to sit up here and talk about him like he's just a, some problem for the party. Wait till we get to the convention. You're going to see people crying, standing, screaming, cheering. He may not get a chance to talk for 10 minutes. We finally get a chance to put our arm around this guy. He did the right thing for this country. He did the right thing for this party. All of us are going to be in this situation someday, and I hope that we take a moment to honor this man and to love this man. I love Joe Biden. I appreciate what he's done, and a lot of people are heartbroken today. Even if it's the right thing, it's still just horrible.
Well, and Van, I mean, on that point, which is a great point that I think resonates with a lot of people, of the personal nature of a decision like this. We often talk about things in a harsh political lens of who's going to fare better, what this looks like. I mean, I also have to imagine what it's been like the last 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks since that debate, to see, what the reporting has been behind the scenes of Democrats who wanted him to get out. On Friday night, the reporting was that he was seething over, seeing big allies of Pelosi come out and call on him to get out, even upset to a degree with his former running mate, President Obama. And just to see, what he personally has witnessed and these calls from his longtime allies, people who certainly praise his legacy, but said, it's time for this decision to be made.
But have we all gone through this with our own family members?
Oh, my
God. He's hurt. He's pissed. A lot of us wouldn't have careers. I wouldn't have a career without Joe Biden. Joe Biden picked me out of the puppy pile. He's the person that everybody says you work for Barack Obama. No, I worked for Joe Biden when I was in the administration. I was on his middle class task force. All of us have known that embrace. All of us have gotten those phone calls and those cards when bad things have happened to us. So, that's a family. That's what it is. He's hurt now. He feels let down. He feels that his friends turned on him. In the fullness of time, he'll recognize that it was done out of love and as loving a way as possible. But at the end of the day, some people, and I don't want to mention any names and ruin this day, but some people will back their leader no matter what. Some people, they don't.
So what he's failing to recognize and understand, and I mean, if this is true about what Joe Biden's saying, he's also failing to understand and recognize that, it was an insurmountable task to get him in office with the state that he was in. I mean, they weren't calling him basement Biden for a reason. They weren't hiding how little of a turnout there was to his rallies for no reason. I mean, nobody was excited about this guy to run, and by brute force, the deep state made sure he got in there, and he can't act surprised when the deep state by brute force makes sure he gets out of there, because they will, prop you up to the highest degree and protect you against anything that comes your way, like they did with Hunter, and then absolutely throw you to the wolves and they don't need you anymore. But, Biden, Harris, Trump, even aside, like the thing that is the most overlooked thing that people I wish would talk about more is that it's not even a Democrat Republican thing anymore. It's a nationalist globalist problem now. So, we have to really drive the concept of nationalism versus globalism to the minds of people. So I don't even think that people like Biden and Harris necessarily understand what they're doing when they're acting on behalf of the globalists. But, it's just a matter of them either being bribed or blackmailed in order to do things that are not conducive to the United States, that work against the United States, because, the ultimate goal, the agenda of the most powerful people in the world is to weaken the United States to the point and water down the culture of the United States so that it's can be mixed in with the rest of the world and become this one world government, central bank digital currency situation. I mean, look at any plan that anybody talks about with what the global elites want to do. They want to slow economic growth, slow population growth. They hate the concept of, what Trump wants to do with oil and, nuclear energy and things that make economic growth happen in America. But that's the thing that's like really going overlooked, and the war aspect of it too. Any president who's had an assassination on his life has been anti-war. JFK, I think it was a month after he announced that U.S. troops are going to be taken out of Vietnam, boom, done. Trump said, he's been saying for the last few years now that he's going to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict. He's going to end what's going on with Israel and Hamas. And even Zelensky now I'm hearing is tired of what's happening. He's ready to do a peace deal. So the deep state, they live off that shit. The military-industrial complex obviously lives off that shit. War, death, military spending, siphoning off the tax dollars and resources of the U.S. and pumping it into the military-industrial complex machine. That's their bread and butter. And, rational people who have the best interest of America in mind aren't, in line with that stuff. And that's really the biggest fear to the establishment, because that's their, in the book from Robert Greene, 33 Strategies for War, it says, if you're competing with somebody, look at what their power center is, like their nucleus, the thing that's most important to them. And the real power center of the deep state establishment, globalists, is the military industrial complex, because that's the biggest amount of money that they can justify being siphoned off from the people and pumped into the agenda that they want to push forward. I mean, it's simultaneously accomplishing the whole death and population reduction and, putting money where they want to put it within the system. So maybe it's a branding thing, I mean, I don't know if the term globalists or deep state is the best term to be using for people, because you see sometimes when you try to make a point and it doesn't really resonate and hit home with people. I mean, I'm all ears. Tell me if you think there's a better way to phrase this terminology, but I that's something that I really think is the thing that we need to focus on, is that it's not a Democrat Republican thing. It's a nationalist globalist thing. Nationalism, putting your country first. Patriotism, maintaining your culture. Globalism is the erosion of culture, mass immigration, foreign aid, all things that and speaking on the topic of foreign aid, I heard this fascinating thing in the book that I'm reading, The Committee of 300. So it says they will fight nuclear energy tooth and nail, especially when it comes to these third world developing countries. They will fight tooth and nail to make sure they don't use nuclear energy, because then they will be able to have economic growth without foreign aid. And foreign aid, as much as the UN and IMF try to act like it's we're doing something good for people, it's one of the biggest weapons that we use against countries in the rest of the world. So there's this book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, And it's basically like loan sharking, you know, like the same way that the mafia would operate. We loan money out to these foreign countries with fluctuating interest rates, and make it kind of messy so that they aren't aware of that. And it's just like what happened in the 2008 housing crisis. We give them a $1 billion loan at a 3% interest rate, and then somewhere buried in the thousands of pages of terms of the document, it says like, oh yeah, but it could go up to an 8% rate if this happens, or if you don't pay it back by a certain time. And then boom. And on top of that, if there's a currency fluctuation where the dollar becomes stronger, it goes from them owing us what would take, let's just to make it simple, if their currency is worth like 50% of what the dollar is worth at the time, the dollar gets stronger by 10%, then they suddenly owe us 10% more, like when having to pay back the loan in their currency. So there's all these economic finance ways to just decimate a country. And point being, when this happens, when they're unable to pay back the loan, then we get our desired outcome. We get to seize their assets, their precious natural resources, because, money, we could print money at will, the United States or the IMF, putting digits into a computer and allocating them and accounting them. That's not a cumbersome task. But what is worth its weight in gold is the natural resources of a company, which we are able to seize when they are not able to pay back their loan. So I'm kind of bouncing around a lot here, but the point of all this is that it's not a coincidence that the presidents that have had assassination attempts on their lives are the ones who take the White House themselves through, charisma and through what they've accomplished with their lives, rather than being placed in the White House by the committees and powers that be. Kamala Harris does not have a single talented quality in her being. Neither is Joe Biden. The only reason they've gotten to where they've gotten is because they kiss ass and don't have any shame and sell out to the establishment. They say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. I'll keep this secret. I will do this dirty thing that you want me to do. That's, I'm not going to be popular for, and I'm going to make this promise and do the complete opposite thing. They're shameless. They will do that, but that's what the people who control the world want. So, it's like figuratively selling your soul. Those are the people who get placed into the White House. But the people who take the White House through charisma and through what they've built their reputation to be, like Trump, Reagan, JFK, that's why those people get either assassinated or have attempts in their lives. And I'm putting together an episode that's about a few different things. One of them is the obviously MK Ultra. I've been talking about that for a while because I think it's more relevant today than ever. Also, Operation Mockingbird and something called the Tavistock Institute. So, just a brief overview of those three things. I'm going to do a deep dive on them. But MK Ultra, that's when the CIA was experimenting with literally mind control. So what they did at this time, and what I think they did in a lot of these, mass shootings that we've seen, or what happened with Trump the other day, what happened with Martin Luther King, what happened with RFK, what happened with JFK, they find somebody who is, mentally unstable, doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't have a lot of family, and they start working with them. They have a handler who kind of puts these ideas in their head, helps them like visualize the plan, right? And they make that person extremely visible the day of. They put together a whole little backstory on them, and bada bing, bada boom, day of, that person is maximally visible. They have the storylines ready. If you ever saw the movie about JFK, I think it's just called JFK or something. It's from Oliver Stone. Great freaking movie, and it talks about how literally countries around the world, they had the stories ready to go, all in unison. And the guy, Mr. X in the movie, who meets with the guy who's investigating it, he said, yeah, I've seen black operations before, CIA operations before, when we're trying to overthrow government, do a coup, or we're trying to push a narrative. He said the way that the stories came out in unison around the world that day, that looked like, standard CIA 101 coup attempt. But point being, like, you saw how the media companies came out in unison after what happened with Trump. They were all saying a certain narrative of, oh, loud noise, Trump falls down on stage, blah, blah, blah. I mean, thank freaking God that we have X and that we were able to see what was happening on the ground there, because who knows how cloudy things would have been if that's not the case. But don't let me veer off into the weeds. So there's that. That's the MK Ultra aspect of it. And then Project Mockingbird, why that's important is because, so, if you've ever been to like the carnival or the circus before, you see how they have the ability to do hypnosis on people. You've seen it in a very exaggerated way where they could get people to, start dancing around, juggling, singing. They could have like a shy person start doing that, like something that's totally out of their normal characteristics. But they could do this in a much more subtle, low-level way through the media, even through print, through entertainment, and they are in a constant state of doing this. That's why there's such a high amount of, I guess, influence or control by the powers that be over the mainstream media, Hollywood, journalism, and they're in a constant state of like programming people. And that's why when you debate with people who, just seem like a lost cause, you'll like literally hear the same talking points that the mainstream media uses, and they'll, like whether it's like safe and effective, conspiracy theorist. And now I thought that this Trump thing was gonna be the final straw where people started seeing it, but it seems like there's still 30 to 40% of the population who's saying like, oh, tap the brakes, let's not jump into conspiracy mode, let's maybe it really was incompetence instead of malice. If that's not mental illness, I don't know what is. If that's not hypnosis, Operation Mockingbird at its finest, I don't know what is. So MK Ultra and Mockingbird sort of go hand in hand. MK Ultra, it's more of like a brute force way to do it. Mockingbird is always and everywhere happening. And funny enough, the CIA tried to say that both of these projects got shut down in like the 70s, but we know there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government operation. So, and then the Tavistock Institute. This is a really interesting topic, and going to do like a full-on deep dive, like probably a 30-minute long pre-recorded episode about this someday, like soon. But apparently, this is a social engineering, I guess, firm or facility in the UK where they like study the hell how to have a maximum effect with their propaganda. And it's so powerful that even the Beatles were a product of the Tavistock Institute. So it's like the study and the carrying out of how to shape the collective consciousness and the way that a population thinks. And, I've been saying this too, like, so entertainment and media shape culture. And then, so it's like culture's downstream from media, and then politics is downstream from culture. So that's where we're at right now. So think about the TV shows in the 1980s, for example. It's like it portrayed the, good-looking jock as the cool person, or the, like there's the cliques in school that they would portray as the cool people, whatever, right? And then today they're portraying like the LGBT or the, disability or the minority people as like the cool clique in school on TV. And then, that's played out into reality in the high schools. From what I've heard people I know from friends and family saying like, oh yeah, you're kind of like not cool in high school today unless you're LGBT or you're a minority. And that's a product of something like the Tavistock Institute. They engineer how the population thinks. And then Operation Mockingbird, the one that's hypnosis through the media, that's the way that they kind of program, embed that in you. And most people aren't rebellious by nature, so even if something like feels wrong in their gut, they're gonna go along with it because they don't want to be like ousted and ostracized by people. So I'm kind of diverting into different rabbit holes here because this is all stuff that's been at the forefront of my mind. What I've been so in the last 2 weeks, we had the Trump thing happen, and then now this happened, and I've been trying to get these episodes out, but obviously these big events keep coming up, and I've been freaking obsessed with what happened with Trump and getting to the bottom of it for the past week. So, with that aside, I'm doing this Operation Mockingbird episode and combining it with I'm doing this MK Ultra episode combining with Mockingbird and the Tavistock Institute because I think they all go hand in hand. It's like really the propaganda used to shape the mind and collective consciousness of a nation. I think that's something that we really need to be conscious of, I think, because I mean, right now we've gone from, in the past week, I think 55% of the nation being on, like, mentally on the right side of things, like seeing the picture clearly, like even if they can't describe the situation and fully understand it, they get it. They get that something's deeply wrong with the other side, and that, Trump is on the good side of things rather than the evil side of things. But, we've only, I think, crept up to like 60%. It feels like maybe 65%. But so what I'm focused on is getting as many or as much as possible of that remaining 35% of people to see the light, because they're still the victim of things like Operation Mockingbird and the Tavistock Institute. And it's easier. There's degrees of how easy it is to brainwash people, but I don't think that we should necessarily give up on these people, and like we shouldn't play the game that they're trying to get us to play by, like, with their whole divide and conquer thing, as difficult as it is. But I think the best hope to set these people free from this mind control and brainwashing that they've fallen victim to is to make it explicitly clear what's happening to them, and make them recognize it. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be people who fall victim to that because they won't want to admit that they've been wrong this whole time. But the larger the number that we could carve into with that, the better. That's what I'm going to be focusing on, at least for the next month. And then in addition to that, we just have to, relentlessly expose all the nasty things that Kamala Harris has done over the course of her life, which should not be difficult to do. And whoever her running mate is, we have to really show the ugliness of what they stand for, because, we see with the Democrat Party, they are very meticulous about not letting an anti-establishment person get in. Like, if they let RFK or Tulsi or Joe Manchin be the candidate, this would be a much different story. Like, I think Trump would probably, before pre-assassination attempt, Trump probably could have ended up losing. Actually, he definitely would have lost RFK if the Democrat Party embraced RFK. Probably would have lost to Tulsi if the Democrat Party embraced Tulsi. Same thing with Manchin. I think all three of those people would have beat Trump, pre-assassination attempt Trump, if the Democrat Party embraced them. But they are so fucking obsessed with absolutely controlling their candidate that they just couldn't let it happen. They needed a psycho globalist extremist in the party, because that's what the globalists, socialists, whatever you want to call them, have done. They've hijacked the Democrat Party as the vehicle to carry out the plan to, bleed America out and destroy it, and bring in this one world government system. Like, if you don't think that that's happening, then you're not going to yell at the people. They're victims to Operation Mockingbird. Let's remember that they're victims to Operation Mockingbird. So I have a little funny one here before we call this a day here. This is one of the people I imagine Kamala Harris is going to entertain as her running mate, and I've been putting together a file of this person because at some point they're going to be in the big leagues. So this is Gavin Newsom, what he was caught up in 2007. You might have seen this, but maybe not.
Coming here in short notice, want to make it clear that everything you've heard and read is true, and I'm deeply sorry about that. I've hurt someone I care deeply about, Alex Turk, his friends and family, and that is something that I have to live with, and something that I am deeply sorry for. I am also sorry that I've let the people of San Francisco down. They expect a lot of their mayor, and my personal lapse of judgment aside, I am committed to restoring their trust and confidence, and will work very hard in the upcoming months to make sure that the business of running the city is framed appropriately.
Yes, fentanyl flight. This is when Gavin Newsom got caught banging the wife of his aide within his administration as San Francisco governor. So if Gavin Newsom happens to be the vice president of Kamala Harris, there is a large file of terrible, gross things that Gavin Newsom has done. And in addition to that, the people who have been funding his political career are very much globalists who do not have the best interests of America in mind. So if you're wondering why Gavin Newsom is such a virtue signaler who just says all the politically correct things at the right times, it's because he has a lot of very ugly skeletons in his closet. And he's not his own person. You know, the globalists have financed his political career. But guys, if you're watching on X, I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers on X within the next month or so. So help a dude out if you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out. If you want to be notified on the stuff that I put out going forward, hit that follow on X. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And we'll really take this thing to the moon. We're trying to fight the good fight against the globalists. Show people what a nationalism actually means. People have this negative connotation of nationalism. And, we have to set the people who are victims of Operation Mockingbird free. So that's what we're doing here. One large endeavor at a time. So hit that follow if you're watching on X. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And check out the video I posted yesterday on YouTube about the audio analysis showing that there was a second shooter shooting at Trump, a second assassin. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Love y'all. Bye.